Hi, I'm James Hamilton from Stumpy Nubs Woodworking Journal, and this is the dual stage homemade drum sander. We actually released this sander a couple of years ago, but that video was getting a little old and it was a little long and had maybe a few too many dumb jokes. So we decided to make a new one that showed the sander's features and answered some frequently asked questions, including how to balance the drums, how to adjust the machine, things you'll need to know should you decide to build one. I'll place a link in the notes below this video for a set of downloadable plans, complete with step-by-step instructions, photos, all that good stuff. So be sure to check that out after you finish this video. But first, let me tell you what makes this the best homemade drum sander out there. I designed this machine to be dual stage. What I mean by that is you can access both the top and the bottom of the drum. That makes it far more versatile than any single stage sander. Not only can you sand a workpiece to thickness beneath the drum using the hand crank feed belt, but you can also sand a workpiece on the top like a V-drum sander. This is my favorite way to use it. I can just walk up to the machine and pass a project part across the drum, or I can even sand it on its edge. Another cool feature is these swappable drums. Instead of using expensive hook and loop sandpaper, this machine is designed to use those common 6-inch wide sanding belts, the ones you can buy in most hardware stores and home centers. They're attached to the drums using spray adhesive, and they last a really long time. But since it would be a pain to peel the paper off every time you change grits, I designed the drums themselves to be swappable. I keep 2 or 3 drums with different grits on them, and when I want to change the paper, I just pop off the end, slide the drum off the shaft, slip on a different one. There's a drive mechanism behind the drum that engages that new drum, and you're good to go. It doesn't take any longer than swapping out the sandpaper itself would be on one of the commercially made machines. In fact, I think it's a little bit faster. But the biggest benefit is that this allows you to use those easy to find, less expensive sanding belts, which I really like. For thickness sanding, the table tilts up and down on one of 4 pivot points. Most homemade drum sanders require that the table be tilted at a steep angle for thin work pieces, so you're either pushing up or downhill. But by having 4 pivot points, this sander keeps the table more level, whether you're sanding thin stock like a 1/4 inch or all the way up to 4 inches thick. There's a micro adjustable mechanism under the table with a quick release feature. This is used to slowly adjust that table height as you sand your workpiece thinner. The feed belt on the table is hand cranked. That gives you most of the benefits of a power feed without the significant increase in expense and complex design that would be required for a motorized mechanism. Dust collection was a bit of a challenge with this machine. We couldn't put dust ports on the top like most drum sanders had because we need access to the top of the drum. So I designed a channel along the side of the drum beneath that top table. This funnels the dust out a port in the back. It's not a perfect solution, but it does make a difference. This machine is also fully adjustable. If the drum isn't aligned with the lower table, you can adjust it with 4 set screws on the front of the sander. If the top table's out of alignment, you can adjust that on the side beneath the hinge. The depth of cut on the top is adjusted by means of a pair of set screws beneath the upper table. And the feed belt tension and alignment is adjusted with a pair of nuts on the sides. As I said, we have step-by-step plans on our website which will guide you through the build process. Just check out the link in the notes below this video. But in the meantime, let me give you some tips that will answer some of the frequently asked questions that we get about this machine. The overall dimensions are about 20 inches wide, 26 inches deep, and 23 inches tall. So this is a substantial machine. You don't want to carry it around. So I suggest making some sort of stand for it. Wheels would be nice too. The motor should be at least 1 horsepower, larger if you can find one. I used a 1.5 horsepower motor from an old table saw that I had. Slow speed, which is about 1700 RPM, is best. But a standard 3500 or 3700-ish RPM motor will work if you put a small pulley on the shaft. I think I use 1.5 inches, and then a large pulley on the shaft for the drum itself, which I think was 5 or 6 inches on mine. A lot of people ask about the bearings. Get good quality sealed bearings if you can. These will last a lot longer than the cheap ones. I bought my bearings and the flanges used to attach them locally, but you can find them online too. You just have to look around a little bit. Some people have said that they can't find those steel flanges, which surprises me because these are pretty common things. But if you can't find them, just make some out of hardwood. People have done that already. They work just fine. Another question people have is about the feed belt. The sander is designed to use a Jet 2244 Plus feed belt. That belt is 47 inches long and about 27 inches wide. You'll have to trim the width down to 20 inches to fit on this machine, but it's a common belt which is available online if you just do a Google search. I believe Highland Woodworking sells them too. The way the table is designed, the closest that you can set the drum to the tilting table is about 1/4 of an inch. If you want to sand thinner stock than that, I just attach it with double-sided tape to an MDF sled and then feed it through that way. The reason why I like doing that is because it helps keep thin, fragile workpieces from becoming damaged should you sand them too aggressively. The biggest question we get is, how do I balance my drums? First of all, if your drum is vibrating really badly, it's probably because you weren't too careful when you made it. You had to be careful when you drilled the hole in the center of the discs, and then those wooden discs have to fit tightly inside the drum so that you know the hole in the center is perfectly centered in the PVC. PVC is usually quite straight, so you shouldn't get much vibration if that shaft hole is centered. But you will want to do some final balancing. So here's how to do it. You take a 22-inch wide piece of flat plywood and attach some very coarse sandpaper to it with heavy-duty staples. You only need staples in one end of the paper. They're just to keep the drum from pulling the paper away as it spins. Now, stick the other end of that plywood panel, the one without the paper on it, onto your feed belt, and then raise the table until the panel is just touching the bottom of the drum. Your drum shouldn't have sandpaper on it like mine does in the video. I made this video after my drums were already balanced, so just ignore the paper. Do yours bare. Now, if you peek inside, the drum should be touching that piece of plywood all the way down its full length. If it's not, you can adjust the drum shaft using the set screws on the front of the machine. Get it as close as you can. If there's a little bit of light showing on one end, that's fine. We'll fix that as we sand. Now, rotate that plywood panel so that the sandpaper end is now beneath the drum, and then turn your machine on. You're going to slowly raise the table so that the sandpaper begins working on that PVC drum. This will sand the drum perfectly parallel to the table and solve any minor balancing problems. Stop when you have scratches all the way down the length of the PVC. Then remove the drum and put another one on the shaft. Don't touch the alignment screws this time because you want all of your drums to be balanced the same. Just sand each drum you have, I made 3 of them, until the surfaces are all scratched up and you're done. You probably have to realign that upper table if you messed with those set screws on the front, but you can do that with these screws on the side beneath the hinge like I showed you before. And once it's dialed in, it should be fine for sanding both on the top of the sander and beneath the drum. And you shouldn't have to touch those set screws again, even if you swap out the drums when you change grits, because you sanded all 3 drums the same. I do highly recommend watching the original video we made about this machine because it has some other tips in it. I'll link to that in the notes below this video, as well as to the downloadable plans. We have a lot of homemade jigs and machine plans on our website, but this one is our most popular by far. I wonder how long it'll take before the machine manufacturers catch on and start making 2-stage drum sanders like ours. Anyway, be sure to check out the latest issue of Stumpy Nubs Woodworking Journal for more woodworking tips, tricks, and tutorials. You can subscribe for free at stumpynubs.com. Happy drumming!